Hey everyone, in this video I want to show you my process for using a 10-stop ND filter to create long exposures in clouds and water. We're going to go out into the field and I'm going to show you how to set up your camera, how to calculate those really long shutter speeds, and also the best time to create these long exposures. Now, shooting long exposures is a great way to add a bit of a fine art, ethereal feel and mood to your image. And you're able to show a couple of things, the passing of time, and then you're able to show of movement, whether it's clouds or water. And so I want to show you guys my process for how I set up the camera. I'm going to go over some settings, how to calculate the shutter speed, and then also a little bit of why you should be doing it, when to do it. So I like to do this when you have the clouds moving directly towards you or directly away from you. The reason is when this happens, you get those really cool streaks in the clouds. This helps out your composition by creating leading lines towards the subject. You also need texture in the clouds to help get those streaks. You also want to make sure that the elements that are moving contrast with the elements that are still. This gives the scene much more dynamic looks and creates that added depth in a photo. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is set the camera up on a tripod. Obviously you're not going to be able to do this handheld. It's going to be, 30, 40 or longer seconds, up to a couple of minutes, so you're not going to be able to handhold this, so you want to get a nice sturdy tripod. The next thing you want to do is you want to set up your composition and set up your focus before you put your filters on, because once you put that filter on, you're not going to be able to focus, you're not going to be able to see your composition just because it's going to be too dark once you put that 10-stop ND filter on. You're also going to want to use manual settings. You don't want to use anything like aperture priority or shutter priority, anything like that. You want to be able to control your camera, all the settings on there, so you can adjust a little bit here and there to get the proper shutter speed that you're looking for. So you want to make sure that everything is set up the way you want it, composition, focus, and settings before you put the filter on the camera. Get your base exposure. This is going to be the exposure without a filter on. So before, again, you put that filter on, make sure you have the settings properly exposed for the scene without the filter. The reason why this is because we're going to have to do some calculations to get the shutter speed once we put this filter on. My camera is at f8. It's at my base ISO, which is ISO 64. Most cameras will be 100 depending on what camera you use. Mine, the base ISO is 64. And then my shutter speed right now is 1/10 of a second. Once you have your base settings, now you're ready to put the filter on. I have my 10-stop ND filter here, and I'm going to go ahead and put it on. Now we got to do some calculations. Yes, we have some math to do. So now we put the filter on, our base exposure is going to be 10 stops too dark. So what we want to do is we want to adjust our shutter speed by 10 stops brighter or longer in order to let more light in. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this. Most cameras, when you adjust your shutter speed, you can simply do one click is 1/3 of a stop. So obviously 3 clicks for one full stop. If we want 10 stops, that's going to be 30 clicks. So you can actually do this with your camera. You can just listen and count 30 clicks. Or with 10 stops, you can also multiply your base exposure by 1,000. So at 1/10 of a second, it's going to be right around 100 seconds or so, 105 seconds. Or the easiest way to do it is to pull out your Photo Pills app and you go under the exposure setting. You want to make sure you're calculating for the shutter speed up here up on top, and you put in your test settings. So my base settings were f8, 1/10 of a second, ISO 64. Now I want to come down here to my equivalent settings. I'm going to put in my base ISO 64, my aperture of f8, and then I want to select 10 stops. That's what my filter is, so I want to select 10 stops. And you can see here now, down at the bottom, it calculates my shutter speed at 1 minute and 42 seconds. That's going to be my new shutter speed. If you're shooting pretty much every other camera than what I have here, what you're going to need is you're going to need to put your camera into bulb mode, and then you're going to need to get some kind of a release, whether it's a cabled one you plug into your camera, or they do have some wireless ones for certain brands and models of cameras. My camera here actually has an extended shutter speed, so I can go up to, I think it's something like 15 minutes of exposure time on my camera. I don't think there's really any other cameras that do it. The Z7, Nikon Z7 II is I think the first camera to have that, which is awesome, so I don't have to have an extra release or anything like that. But pretty much every other camera, if you're going longer than 30 seconds of shutter speed, you're gonna want to get a release. Alright guys, if you're interested in some really moody and unique landscapes, check out the video from the bayou where we get some extraordinary conditions, and we'll see you over there. Bye!